Hello everybody and welcome to World Talks. We're here at the Warsaw Security Forum 2025 and I'm joined by Dr. Benjamin L. Schmitt from the University of Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much. Great to be on TVP World here in Warsaw.
Welcome, welcome. Now you've just finished this report on Baltic security. Please tell us what you studied and what you discovered.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to tell the viewers you can find Underwater Mayhem, which is the first volume in our report series, which was published just a few months ago, and it's focusing on subsea infrastructure protection and security issues around some of the recent sabotage, offshore sabotage incidents that have taken place in the Baltic Sea region, in the Barents Sea, as well as in East Asia around Taiwan, and then we also have a corollary part of our study that we'll have coming out soon on Russian activities in the Antarctic and in the polar regions. So it's certainly a research project that we have been working on for a few years, and it's now even more in the headlines than ever, especially with the recent drone incursions that we've seen, not only here in Poland, where it was shown that Russian military drones flew into Poland, but also just a few days ago, we've seen, of course, drones that have violated the airspace of Denmark, of northern Germany, of Sweden, and of Norway, and there's a potential maritime vector there that we're currently researching to see if some of those incidents may have been launched from ships either in the Baltic Sea or in the North Sea. And of course, we saw here at the Warsaw Security Forum this morning that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that some of these launches, they believe, the Ukrainians believe, came from Russian shadow fleet vessels, which of course are under sanctions for violating oil sanctions on the Kremlin in response to its illegal invasion of Ukraine. So there's a lot of dynamics going on here, with the center of which is energy security and critical infrastructure protection, but this is all really rounding out into a national security threat that we need to counter as the collective West. And our small contribution is this project from the University of Pennsylvania, both the Kleinman Center for Energy Policy and Perry Worldhouse, that is focused on countering underwater mayhem from the Kremlin.
Very fitting title, Underwater Mayhem. So where should we expect the next bulk of activity, if you will? Do you think it's the center of gravity right now is indeed the Baltic Sea?
Yeah, so I think that the center of gravity absolutely is the Baltic Sea, frankly. There's a reason that I'm not just here at the Warsaw Security Forum here today, but also continuing to do field research out in Europe for our next volume. And one of the things that I was able to do on the way here is not to fly to Warsaw, but to fly to Stockholm so that I could take a ferry from Nynäshamn all the way down to Gdansk. It took about 20 hours, but I was able to choose that route because I wanted to do some field research, get out in the Baltic Sea and actually see where some of these incidents have taken place that we've studied, and also some recent activities that have been going out there. And so the ferry passed near where the Yipeng 3, a People's Republic of China flagged bulk carrier, cut the Sea Lion 1 telecommunications cable connecting basically from the Gulf of Finland, connecting Finland to Germany, and that took place in November 2024. So I was able to get out there, and also the ferry was able to pass near the Petro-Baltic platform, and of course that is a Polish-owned and operated oil platform in the Polish exclusive economic zone in the Baltic Sea. And just last Friday, on September 19th, 2025, we had a major incursion again in which Russian fighter jets, two of them, flew in a simulated attack profile against that oil platform and basically buzzed it as they went by. So we have all sorts of different of these threat vectors, whether it's from the air, on the surface, or below the Baltic Sea. And frankly, I think we're going to continue to see that go on because, let's face it, Don, Vladimir Putin is losing this war, and he wants to remove the solidarity we have in the West to support Ukrainian victory. He's been doing this through disinformation, through strategic corruption and elite capture, and now, of course, over the past few years, through physical sabotage and sort of national security incursions into NATO territory. And let's be clear, a lot of folks call this a shadow war or hybrid war or all these sort of things. Those are very academic and maybe technical terms, but we talk about this a lot when we're talking about our research, but we're also very clear that beyond these being quote unquote hybrid threats, these are these are acts of war, let's face it. And whether or not we're in a conventional war with the Russian Federation, and our populations probably wouldn't say that we're at war with Russia. Russia, however, is at war with us, right?
And they blatantly say it.
And they blatantly say it, absolutely.
What about, one of the big questions I've had on my mind is the North Sea, the oil platforms that you have there.
Yeah.
I mean, Poland has just connected its Baltic pipe to diversify away from Russian energy. It's very important for Poland.
Yeah.
What about that type of infrastructure, and is it being monitored well enough? Is it being watched, and is there a potential for Russia to cause an environmental disaster in that part while harming our energy security?
Yeah, well, I think that's really important to bring up, Don. And let me just give you a little bit of context. I served for 4 years as a non-political appointee. I was a science policy advisor, but I served as European Energy Security Advisor in that role at the U.S. Department of State. And one of the big areas focusing on Nordic and Baltic energy security that I was in charge of was cooperating with Norway, with Denmark, and in particular with Poland on the completion of that Baltic pipe project. That took a lot of shuttle diplomacy between Warsaw, Copenhagen, and Oslo, and it couldn't have come sooner than it was needed by fall of 2022, as Russia had cut off all of the various gas conduits it was using to weaponize gas to Europe over the years, and of course had cut off after its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Baltic pipe was ready to go. Of course, the enlarged Świnoujście terminal and the Gipel pipeline between Poland and Lithuania. Poland obviously has been a model partner of the NATO alliance on energy security, and those pieces of infrastructure show it. But at the same time, we can build that diversification infrastructure, build that hardware. It's not unless we also can protect these pieces of infrastructure from cyber, and in particular now physical attacks, and that includes from the North Sea, where we have a significant amount of oil and gas coming from off the Norwegian coastline. And absolutely, we've seen Russian alleged spy vessels, espionage vessels, and seabed warfare capable vessels basically lurking around in the North Sea, whether they're around the United Kingdom or Ireland. They've also obviously been seen off of the Norwegian, North Atlantic and North Sea coastlines, and obviously also in the Baltic Sea. But we need to continue to increase our collective resilience by increasing patrols. I think the Operation Baltic Sentry by NATO has been super important. But we need to make sure that that same level of care, and I think it is being taken, is focused on in the North Sea as well, and all the way up to the Barents, where we've obviously saw, as one of the case studies in our own report, that in even 6 weeks before the full-scale invasion took place in 2022, in January of 2022, a Russian-flagged fishing vessel, the Melkart 5, was found to have cut one of the two telecommunications cables connecting the largest ground-based commercial satellite station on the planet in Svalbard with the Norwegian mainland. And so that obviously has an effect of being considered, from our point of view, a shaping operation by the Russians to basically set the battlefield before their invasion of Ukraine. They continue these sort of shaping operations through drone incursions, through subsea pipeline attacks, through subsea cable cuts, and using this plausible deniability of, well, this one was a Chinese vessel and this one had a different flag from the Cook Islands or so on and so forth, and spreading disinformation about these. So we need to stay focused. I think NATO is focused through Operation Baltic Sentry and their various critical infrastructure protection subsea mission cells that have been stood up at NATO headquarters and at Markham in London. And we just need to continue to do this. And I keep calling on NATO member states to invoke NATO Article 4 about these sabotage incidents, especially those that have been attributed to Russian actors or Russian-hired non-Russian nationals. It's what I often call the AC/DC approach to sabotage. Putin's dirty deeds done dirt cheap. He's been basically having the GRU contact folks that are of non-Russian origin and paying them a little amount of money to a little amount of sabotage on the NATO territory, and this has to stop. And so I think Article 4 would help. And obviously, we saw Poland maybe push through that taboo some member states may have had about Article 4. Poland invoked Article 4 for the drone attacks that took place a few weeks ago, and Estonia for the Russian fighter jets that came into their territory. We're going to have to continue to see if other member states will follow suit.
Exactly. Now you've also found some interesting activity in Antarctica.
Yes. Yeah,
so
right.
What's going on there?
So you might say, okay, Antarctica. Now, folks at home, we're talking about Antarctica, not the Arctic. So we're sitting up here in Northern Europe and now thinking about basically the furthest away on our planet that we can. But Russia is engaging in underwater mayhem in the Antarctic Treaty System as well. Look, the Antarctic Treaty System says that below 60 degrees south in latitude from the maritime space in the Southern Ocean all the way to the South Pole, that no oil and gas or mineral exploration or exploitation can take place. And that's just what we've shown, and will come out in Volume 2 of our Underwater Mayhem series. We've shown through open source intelligence data, AIS and satellite data, that the Russians have been operating their purportedly Antarctic research fleet to look for oil and gas. And frankly, they've come out publicly when confronted about this and say, yeah, we're looking for oil and gas, and it's for, quote, scientific purposes, even though that goes against the Antarctic Treaty System. What is connecting this to the underwater mayhem, whether it be in Northern Europe or in East Asia or elsewhere, is that some of the same vessels, including the Russian nuclear-powered icebreaker Sevmorput that was seen near the Baltic connector damage site, sabotage site, with the PRC-flagged new polar bear vessel that had been shown to drag its anchor in the Gulf of Finland in October 2023. That same vessel has been deployed to the Antarctic Treaty System, or at least saying that they're going to go down there. And we show that this has been basically doing maneuvers over cables in the South Atlantic. I was down and spent a month in South America in August, just this year, doing field research in Chile, Uruguay, and Argentina, and also making a visit down to Punta Arenas in the Cape Horn area. We got to go out on the water in the Straits of Magellan and really get close to, not where exactly this took place in Antarctic waters, but as near as possible without going to Antarctica. And of course, I was fortunate enough to, in 2020, go to Antarctica as part of a telescope project I was working on with the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. And even though I was down there for astronomy and trying to not think about energy geopolitics for a little bit, when I got off of the continent, I heard, well, guess what the Russians were doing while you were there? I was at the South Pole, they were on the other side of the continent, searching for oil and gas, and we've seen for 5 consecutive years they've been doing this. Underwater mayhem, seismic shooting, undermining the international norms and treaties.
But what would be the purpose behind that, do you think?
I mean, look.
Is it like testing, yeah, like they're doing, It's
testing. Certainly what we've seen in recent weeks, I think, is meant to demonstrate to NATO populations that our air defenses are not up to snuff in terms of monitoring as well as deterring the sort of drone incursions that we've seen, or the fighter jets that have come into NATO airspace. In the Antarctic and other locations around the world, Russia has been pushing multilateral norms and the rules-based international order as much as possible. So while they're pushing this in the Antarctic Treaty System and searching for oil and gas and breaking those rules, we also, of course, have seen them in low Earth orbit and beyond, up in space, doing this sort of stuff. In 2021, they had a direct descent anti-satellite weapons test, which created thousands of pieces of space debris that endangered not only NASA and European Space Agency astronauts aboard the International Space Station, but Roscosmos' own Russian cosmonauts on the International Space Station. I can't imagine what that conversation was like on the space station, but it took place nevertheless, that their destructive anti-satellite tests put the ISS in danger. And so we've seen Russia weaponize subsea domains, surface of the water domains of around the global ocean, the Antarctic Treaty System, putting stress on the Outer Space Treaty, and this is what the Kremlin under Vladimir Putin loves to do. They love to try to get their geopolitical aims through the sort of destabilizing activities in global fora, and this is what we need to, as the collective democracies around the world, and in particular the transatlantic community and NATO, to push back on vociferously.
So when assessing the Russian threat, we go from space all the way to the depths of the oceans. Dr. Benjamin Schmitt, thank you so much for joining us here on TVP World today.
Thanks a lot, Don.
Thank you. And that concludes this edition of World Talks. Thanks for joining us, and stay with us for more here on TVP World.